So how are you this morning? I hope that you guys doing very well. And yeah, it's really humid and it's very hot. So last week I was really surprised of how much we spend electricity. So the cost is kind of unimaginable. So I never paid like electricity bill like that. And last night I talked to my kids and my wife, and then they didn't know how much we pay for the electricity. It means that it's really hot and humid. It's not like a typical LA, Los Angeles weather. Maybe it depends on where you live, and then if you live in close to the beach and like Cyprus and Los Alamitos in Southern California area, and then maybe they don't use a lot of air conditioner, and it depends on the device of the environment where you are in. So maybe a lot of factors out there, but still just think about just if we see the electricity bill, and then oh wow, it's almost $300 and $500, and yeah, depends on how much you use it. But if you see analyze in details and oh why I have used a lot, because this factor and this factor and this factor. But sometimes if we see the whole, and we cannot see the details, but sometimes we see the details and then we cannot see the whole. Yeah, that's why we need to see the detail, to see the big pictures. And sometimes we have a big picture, but if you don't have detailed things, and we cannot carry out what you are thinking about and what you plan, right? That's a big problem. So maybe I'm the person see the big pictures, and I'm the person really see detailed things, and that's why I'm delicate and whatever you said. And then we need both. But still depends on your philosophy of the worldview, like a philosophy of the how you understand of the people and world, and your perspective is different, and your kind of life is kind of different, right? And maybe your thinking is different. Always, I tend to see the big picture, but I try to see the detailed things. But some people always care about the detailed things, small things. They cannot see the big pictures. I don't know which kind of tendency you have, but here is kind of one of your philosophy, the psychology. And people really, after modernism, is really used to kind of structure and logical reasoning, right? And analyze and try to find and cause an effect, and then try to solve the problem. But around early 20s in Austria, in Germany, and one of the kind of psychological tendencies came out, psychologists came out. We call the Gestalt psychology. And that's one of the way that the therapists, the psychotherapists use accept their understanding of the people's understanding of the world, and then try to apply their principle into the therapy. So today we're gonna see the Gestalt therapies, and I know I'm gonna give you general things. There is a lot of it depends on the scholars, and depends on how the therapists, the psychology developed and therapists developed, and then depends on little bit there is a difference, but still what is the Gestalt psychology, and what is Gestalt therapy, psychotherapy, right? And how they use it, and what is the techniques. Usually we have learned about the psychotherapies in this class, right? Today, let's think about another therapist. Therapy is based on the what? Humanism. So we already person-centered, existential, and this is another humanistic therapy. So humanism, human-centered, right? Gestalt therapy. So think about the basic premise, this kind of idea about the humanistic psychology as well. People have the capability to deal with their problem, right? They have ability, so really positive on nature of the human being, right? If you see the human being like a Christian theology, is totally different, right? And that's the different things, but still, this is you can see a lot of difference, a lot of similar things, but still they are a little different, right? So I don't know whether you guys see this one. What can you see? So maybe you can think about the trees, and what's in the tree of the safari in Africa, one of the countries, right? One of the countries in Africa, right? Can you see the trees? And what else you can see? Maybe bird? And what else? So it depends on your perception, and you can see two pictures. One is a tree, and just think about you really focus on the black colors, and you can see tree and bird. What about if you see the black colors in the background, and if you really focus on the white part, and you can see what like a lion, female lion, and gorilla like that, and they face each other, right? Interesting. So your perception may be different, If you see the whole, maybe you can see both. But if you see a specific one, and then some people can see just trees, and some people can see, trees are really obvious, but some people cannot see maybe gorillas or the lions, right? And what about, this one is more classical. What about this picture? You can see two people face each other, right? But if you see the white part, and what can you see? Like a Santa Claus, right? More base, like this. This one is different. What about this one? You can see, if you focus on the really there is a pattern is there. If you do pattern, one black horse with the king, right? King is riding black horse is toward the right side, on the left side, and then what about the white horse with the king is what? Toward that's the right side, right? There is a pattern is there, but sometimes, maybe, I don't know, maybe if you really focus on the white, and it's hard to see the black, right? Sometimes if you see black, and sometimes it's easy to, which one is obvious for you guys? Right? And what about last one? Can you see that one? because maybe someone is kind of shade is here, someone's face is here, right? You can see eyebrows, eyes here, nose is here, and then mouth is here. That is a human being. It's a chin is here, right? Neck. What about the other side? This is a head. What about? Can you see another figure? Someone is blowing a trumpet. There is a big nose, trumpet, hands, feet, right, and leg. That is one of the figures of Gestalt psychology, it's a figure and ground. So our perception is little bit different from from how you see the object, right? And then so they really not focus. They don't really focus on the analyzing object. Instead, they want to see focus on their perceptions, how they perceive. There's illusion too, right? Sometimes there is another one is closeness, distance, and then one is the same. I don't know whether you guys. I took a psychology class, and then I see we had So depends on the distance and the what. Close one is longer and what. Sometimes farther one is smaller, even though there's the same thing, right? Maybe if you're artistic, maybe it's easy to understand. Artist, and maybe it's easy to understand. But let's go back. Go back to Gestalt psychology. It's like early 20th centuries and try to explain the perception in terms of a Gestalt rather than analyzing their constitution, right? There is and what's this one? This is a cell phone, right? iPhone 13 cell phone. Maybe you can analyze, we make a phone call and make we can text, and then a lot of things we can use this one. And then maybe you can analyze the functions, maybe you can analyze the shapes and sizes and compare with the other sizes and other forms, and then, right? But that is the kind of usually people do, right? What about just as it is, and what do you see this one? Maybe just phone. This phone is open, right? And it's open like this. That is try to that is Gestalt psychology tries to understand the object. So the theory of your perception was the what? Rejection of basic principle, basic principle of what? Element and structuralist psychology. What is element and what is structure, right? That one is really focused on the analysis. That's a little bit different, right? And then really they focus on what's a whole organism. So organism perceive the entire pattern or configuration, not really individual components. Can you see that the last one with pictures? Kind of makes sense, right? So human being organism, one of organism, right? Organism. So perceive entire patterns of configuration. It's not a detailed thing. So we can see later what it's about. And so their basic principles of proximity and similarity and figure ground, we already saw the pictures, and then close and continuity and connections. That's the human's visual perception in connection with the different object and environment, right? here is one of the example. When you see the triangle, maybe even though there is a disconnected and then try to close, oh, there's a triangle, but there is an open, right? We have a tendency, wow, oh, that's a close, right? So even though it's not, object is not incompleted, but still we tend to see the what? Close. What about similarity? Can you see? It's a circle. So this one is similar, then what? Second one is similar to third and fifth, and then what? Can you see the pattern? It's a black, and yeah, white and white. We already sort of figured it out, right? What about the proximity? Proximity means that which one is closer and which one is a distance, right? So sometimes we try to put together closer one and like what? Our eyes is kind of perceive them as a group like this, right? Similarity is a little bit different. What about the continuance? When you go to kind of a street or road and what, you see that a lot of the big trees on the side, and then you can see the way, right? Like that is a good example like this. Basically, their understanding is what human being perceive what as a whole, perceive things as a whole, not just. And sometimes they use a closer, and sometimes similarity, and sometimes they use a figure and background, and sometimes what proximity, and sometimes what continuity, right? That's why their basic understanding of the object and human being. That's a Gestalt psychology. What is a Gestalt? Gestalt therapy, psychotherapy is about. They really emphasize what humans' responsibility, like humanism. Right? Humanistic therapy is really emphasize the human's responsibility. That's really, and you can choose it, but you have to take a responsibility, like existential therapy, right? And really emphasize on personal responsibility and focus on the individual experience in the present moment. They really here and now, really focus on the here and now. And then, therapist, the relationship. Usually, one of the characteristics in humanistic psychotherapy is and they really emphasize relationship between therapist and the client. The authentic relationship, trust relationship. It's a really building kind of relationship is really important in therapy, right? And environmental and social concept of human life. And that is a little bit different. They really focus on the environment, not the background of the families, human beings, environment. Yeah, that is one of the characteristics in Gestalt psychology, and then they try to use different technique with the other therapies, humanistic therapies, and social context of the person's life. Right? Even though they really focus on the present, they still deal with the past. But the social context to think about and what's the environment and other environment is including everything, this human relationship and relationship with nature, so everything, right? But social context, how people can relate to the others, and and work like this. And what about self-regulation or just people like this, and basically try to understand the human being as a whole. It's the same as existential therapy, and then not the person-centered therapy, and then really not demonize the individual stuff, right? That is, it's just the Gestalt psychology, therapy is a little focus more on than other, So here is, and then another, this distinction between the direct experience and indirect secondary interpretation developed the process of therapy. So sometimes they cannot experience everything and then through the therapy section, and then they kind of set up the environment, and then they try to help the therapist that try to help the client to aware the client self. So what is the process? The therapy process is kind of let the client aware of what she's doing, and what triggerability risk shift what change in their life, right? So aware, so that is really important things, and it's really basic, and not really basic, premises, propositions. Okay, then maybe if you understand about humanistic psychotherapy, and then the human being, what's the perspective of human beings, about understanding of nature of human beings, a little similar with others, and Gestalt means a whole. So Gestalt therapy is based on the person feeling so whole and complete in their life, even though there is some missing, and then try to understand the whole. It's really ideal, right? Just think of, here is one person and react kind of react in such a situation, and then how you understand. If you just focus on that one, it's a lot of analysis. We can analyze a lot of things because of the reaction. But if it's hard to understand, maybe you can guess through, maybe also inductively you can find the cause, but sometimes you get the individual things and the individual elements, the structures, and then it's hard to understand. That's why that's the basics. Human, so based on the human's feeling whole, complete in their life, whether it's good or not. So Gestalt therapy is considered to be a here and now therapy. I already told you. Really focus on here and now, present time. So focus on awareness with the belief that when focus on what they are and not what wish to become, not the future, not the past, how they are doing. So they become self-realized, they can be aware of yourself, and then maybe let go to the past angers there in the past, of the past, and then maybe not just dreaming about, fantasy about the future, and then they can adjust to the what? Real life. But still, the idea is self is acceptance and what? The human beings become self-actualized, like humanistic philosophy. So, Gestalt psychology, the Gestaltists, they believe that the individual naturally seek to become what? An integrated whole being, living productively. Do you know the closure one is kind of conceived, even though there is unclosed, and that's a human being's tendency. They understand the way. So seek to become an integrated whole being, living productively. That's a human being's tendency. They understand it that way. I don't know whether completely. I don't know how much you guys agree with this one. And living productively is another word, right? That's what they are really emphasizing what? Responsibility. So Gestaltists are not anti-deterministic because they believe that humans ability to change and become responsible. Human beings' lives are fate, predetermined by some. Now, they said we have still freedom to choose, and we have ability to adjust, change, right? That's a basic understanding. It's similar with other humanistic thought, right? Yeah. So Gestalt borrows heavily from the view of existential and recognize the experientialist, and then was a phenomenologist, and then because they already emphasize on aware themselves, and then what, and they really emphasize on present, and what they after being aware of yourself, and then they can grow, and you eventually make your self-actualizations, right? So really Gestalt focus on the client own world of the interpretation and assessment of the personal life situation, how they in, not the outside, right? Maybe assessment is helps understanding what's inside of what world, right? But still, they really focus on the both and assessment of the person's life situation, and then what's inner world, and then another word is about their kind of worldview, whether it's kind of their world is damaged or not, and hurt or not, and how they understand the world. And there's a basic and understanding of the human being, but still they believe that individual emphasize intellectual experience, right? Intellectual experience diminish the importance of emotion and sense. Just think about it. If you educated and if you have learn more and self-understanding more and what, so you can deal with this kind of a lot of problems. Sometimes why we are depressed. I play tennis every Tuesday and Thursday if I have time, and then yesterday one man came to us, and then he shared about his story, and then he really has compassion. Yeah, he's really has compassionate heart for the people who are really marginalized in society, and then really poor, and then, but they don't know, they don't have a hope, but they try to help them get the hope in faith, right? He's a Christian, and then he spent a lot of time and energies, and then that's why he went to really remote area, and then serve them with his skills, help them with his skills, and sharing the gospel with them. But he said that he was preparing for another trip this year, but suddenly he got diagnosis by PTSD, post-traumatic syndromes, disorder syndrome, something like that. And so he's dealing with the problem. He said that once he doesn't have any desires and he is not happy, he said feel like depressed. And then when I read my knowledge and just to read, the whole thing that he experienced in the past is comes to his mind, his heart, and turn to his. He cannot take away all the burdens. That's why this is too heavy and it's hard to deal with. And then why is it good in life like this? So he tries to deal with a lot of things, and then he tried to solve the problem by himself because he has some skills, and then he has oriental medicine doctors, and then he can use acupunctures, and he can make own medicine like that. And then I asked him, did you go to psychologist? And maybe psychiatrist a little different, and he said no. He understands what he's going through, and then try to solve the problem. He tries to solve the problem in his own way, not expose himself to psychiatrists and psychologists yet, right? But sometimes maybe if he knows, and maybe like a gestalt psychologist and was a psychotherapist, and then he can maybe get help from therapy, but I don't know whether when he's gonna go. So so really just think about intellectual experience, meaning that you learn something and diminish the kind of your emotional and other life problem that you could face, right? And Gestalists believe that thought and feelings and reactions to the past event and situations can hide personal functions and prevent the here and now awareness. Whether it's good, if you had, just think about, if you had really good at high school and then always think, oh yeah, I can do it, but still real life, you don't do good. Like, just think about if you're all A's in the high school, but somehow you cannot go to college, right? And then always you have confidence in yourself, and then it's like a fantasy, and then even though you are doing, if you are fail and just not getting a good grade, but still believe that like this, right? That's the past event and situation. So there is they use unfinished business, like a pastor you had some situation and event that you have to deal with and finish it, but still the unfinished and then still influence on you. That is they said unfinished business. So they said that the most common unfinished business is that of not forgiving one's parent for possible mistake in one's parenting. Right? That is one of the examples though. Still dealing with it. Mistreated and still dealing with the past event and happenings. So one of the really great, they really focus on is self-awareness. You gotta know what you are doing now. You gotta know what you had before. You are dreaming about. So self-awareness is not just individualist, one of the elements, right? And try to understand So continuance, right? You can see the continuance and see the patterns. And so awareness is considered one of continuum with how is the person being most aware. So if you know your past, if you know your present, if you know what you really want to do, you can be healthy. But you gotta deal with the unfinished business. That is psychotherapy, Gestalt psychotherapy, kind of helping the client. So really, emphasis is in reality. It's not your dream, right? Current or and dreaming about. It's not your need, kind of future need. So individual recognize their internal need or meet their through the manipulation of the need and environment, right? They need to meet their need. They need to understand their needs, right? There is why people have really big trouble in simple way that in Gestalt psychotherapy is they have the low self-esteem that affect their life. That's why they have a problem. Another one is preoccupation with the past. That's one of the examples that sometimes preoccupation with sometimes a good or bad, all things, not just bad things, right? They understand why people have troubles. And then here is some difficulty may arise in several ways, and loss of contact with the environment and its resources. First, contact with the environment. You can see, you can sense, you can talk, you can smell. That's the environment. So loss of contact with the environment, power is very important. And its resources. Just you can think about just a physical environment, where I am now, and maybe in the classroom, what do I have? just think about what is the environment that are you in now, right? Yeah, the loss of contact with the environment and the resources. Sometimes we are disconnected from the environment, and then that's just big trouble. What about loss of contact with the self through the involvement with the environment? You don't know who you are or what you are doing with the environment. That's a big trouble. One of the main troubles, and then fail to put aside unfinished business. Right? Still, you have done well, and it's not. Maybe even though that's not good things, and you gotta overcome, and you gotta digest the situation and event. It doesn't bother you anymore. That's you finish the business. But if you unfinish the business, means that still you are hanging there. That past event and past experience is still influence negatively. That is another problem. One of the causes. What about loss of the gestalt resulting fragmentation and scarcity? And just to really focus on the small individual factors, and then you lose the whole individuals, the whole being in the world. That's one of the problems. What about the experience? Experience of conflict between what one should do and what one wants to do. Like in my cultural background, is to think about kids, children's future. Children wants to do this one, but society kind of push the children to study, right? Only the way they can be successful. But nowadays it's changed a lot, and try to find, parents help the kids try to find the ways, but still we can see a lot of people are really forced on studying, and because the way that if you go to good college and graduate from the college, and it's more chance to be successful. But nowadays I can see the YouTuber and another major in playing games, and then I never thought about it. There is a major in college. There is a professional game player, professional, right? There is a professional YouTuber, and sometimes if you are really good at something and post on the YouTube and a lot of subscribers, and then you can make a lot of money, right? If you are not kind of oriented on materialism, maybe you combine different things. Also, a lot of people think about what is a successful man. Okay, you have a social, kind of social status and wealth, right? That is a big thing in your vocation. That is related to American dreams, and then a lot of people, life is really towards making more money because they want to make their life comfortable and convenient. That is kind of trouble coming out of there's some situation, right? So experience kind of a difficulty with the life, like talk dichotomies, love, hate, and pleasure, pain, and masculinity or femininity, and that's like a difficult experience, and then influence on person, and person cannot deal with this problem, and then there is a basic understanding of a Gestalt psychologist, and therapist. What about the role of the counselor then? What the counselor do with the client? How do a counselor help the client to deal with all their problems? Here is the counselor's role, and then the counselor create the environment for the client to explore their need in order to grow. First of all, when they come to office, and then not the physical condition, but the relationship with that's a really important relationship between counselor and client, like existential and other humanistic psychotherapies. So always inviting for the client to explore their need in order to grow and aware themselves, themselves and grow, right? That is important things, and then that's why maybe what is the environment? How can we set the environment? And first of all, we're going to know that the kind of what is very important between counselor and then client. That's it. And then you can get a more understanding. Counselors are fully with the client in here and now with intense personal involvement and honest. Okay, I'm the counselor. I'm going to just give you information, and then I can just use technique to help you. It's not that kind of relationship. Well, here and now what he's going through, and you have a strong empathy. You don't have, if you don't counselor, if the counselor don't have strong empathy, it's not a good therapy for the counselor. Empathy, right? Compassion. You gotta have that one. And so you gotta understand what they are going through, and what the counselor, the counselor should have honest feeling about how they feel, and understand how they feel, how they're going through, how they think about. So counselor helps our client to discern the lack of patterns. You know the patterns? It's not always optimistic. Right? What is the real life? Really focus on the real life. And that's a kind of counselor's role in to help the client see the realities. Right? And here is some rules that counselor use to help a client. Okay? The principle of the now, here and now, requires the counselor to use the personal, present tense. Okay, not the past, present tense. So even though, and make sure, right? And then I and you means that the relationship between counselor and the client. The client must address the person directly rather than to talk about them and to the counselor about them. Right? It's like I and you. That is one of the techniques. And then also making client use use I instead of reporting own experience in the second you and third person. Always think about I. And through the process and then help the client to aware self, right? And counselor has the client convert the question into statement. And instead of questioning, so you gotta just not asking and then say something, right? Because a statement. So existential psychotherapies, and then writes a DMS4 and categories and standard assessment is not considered necessary within this theory. And that's counselors role, how make the kind of environment and how they need what is their job. So depends on what kind of your personality. Even though if you want to become a counselor, and then just think about, even though you guys have a different personality though, but if you are not strong empathy and then compassion on your client, it's not suitable for this approach is not suitable for you, right? What is the goals of this counseling? So goals are the emphasis on the here and now of the client experience. Eventually, you gotta know where you are, right? And client the counselor should encourage client to make choices based on the here and now. Not past, not the future, here and now. Sometimes past experience and kind of daydreaming of futures, and it's hard to make a decision, even though it's not real, right? Daydreaming is not real, but it's hard. And help client to resolve the past, unfinished business, right? That's one of the goals of therapies. And assist the client to become congruent. Person-centered, congruent, how reality, what's reality, right? How they respond. Not incongruent, right? What about the personal image, and what about and self? Do you know the pictures in person-centered? What about another goal is to help the client to reach maturity intellectually. Intellectually understand and intellectual experience, they believe that help to diminish their own problem. That's why. Goal is and there is kind of help the client shed neuroses, and then sometimes, and not all the times. Here is pictures, and then how they start, and Gestalt psychologists, how they use the sequence of the uninterrupted sequence of they try to the therapies, right? And can you see and kind of when you start and just something happens, right? Something's happened and withdraw our attentions and what happened, and then so client and then look back and see aware self, and then make a kind of different techniques, and then feel and self and think about self, right? And then aware who I am, where I am now. And then kind of energy mobilization, and then mean that they need kind of understand the physical bodies and understand themselves, and how can you, how can you mobilize yourself? How can you move forward yourself, right? That's kind of understanding your physical body too, mind, and right? And what kind of action you need. Maybe comfort, maybe you gotta practice something, and you gotta choose, and responsible. And then, what are you gonna do? Still, and do in real situation, right? Maybe you can, this one is that you can resolve the problem or the closure step. There's a cycle that I got from usually maybe wording is different, but still there's a cycle that other psychotherapists are having, but the wording is and therapy is a little bit different, right? That's why. That's a basic kind of a process in Gestalt therapy. So when I use the Gestalt therapy, so I try to read book and articles and some things, and sometimes it's hard to, when we use the therapy, I didn't like the last time, and then we don't have any the existential therapies really focus on not the psychosis and psychotic and kind of stuff, and then but this one is kind of WebMD kind of recommended for the Gestalt therapies, and then maybe it's helpful to understand how can use these therapy techniques, and then but still if you, without any training, it's hard to apply, and just maybe it's there is kind of a limitation. There is we can understand the theory, but if you don't experience any practical and practice, and it's hard to apply. Yes. Yeah. So that's why when you become when someone is become a therapist, then they need practical law. Like why you guys go to 500-hour practicum, and then after that and whole year, like in terms of hours, it's a lot. Okay. Professional clinical psychologist, for the professional clinical psychologist, about how many hours? I think the 3,000 hours. 1,500 while they are in school, and after and another 1,500 hours. That's why the practicum is really important. And then maybe it's helpful for you guys and understand. Maybe it's hard to understand. Just think about the basic theories, and how can this theory connect to these problems. And anxiety. who have really anxiety attack and anxiety and worry about a lot. And Gestalt therapy helps people focus on present, right? This allows the individual to discover what immediate thought, feeling, and behavior may be taken to feel anxious, right? And then there's a really, maybe if you really don't know how to behave and how to, then maybe helpful, really helpful, because this therapist and help them to understand the reality and then really focus on here and now, right? Present. So, and maybe can diminish, with the therapy helps to diminish the anxiety. What about behavioral health issues? And Gestalt therapy can help people with behavioral conditioning like bipolar disorder, extreme to emotional flight, emotional status, and then once really down and up, like a bipolar disorder. It's also effectively a therapeutic method for treating substance abuse and compulsive gambling and PTSD and post-traumatic syndrome disorder, and then people struggling with condition may be developed a new view of life through Gestalt therapy and may see a positive change in their lifestyle. Maybe it's kind of unfinished business, and then people kind of driven their way, and then they try to find another outlet, and then that's why they come here having addictions. Addictions, gambles and drugs and sex and any, right? What about depression is self-awareness. So it can help people depressed become aware of possible stress situation to the depression. So no meanings, no energies in life. Like I already shared the story that I heard yesterday. I feel like he is kind of depressed because of the view of life. Seems like understanding and trying to help, but there's no way there to get them out of the situation. It's another level though, right? What about the relationship difficulty and Gestalt therapy helping couples recognize underlying destructive behavior may be negatively impact on their lives and relationship, and how to making positive change in the relationship and individual lifestyles. And what about the self-esteem issue, right? One of the problem in was that they said if you have a low self-esteem in the work, it has a lot of problem, right? And that's why, so how people with low self-esteem identify and overcome the underlying factors and contribute to their low self-esteem. What is the cause? Why? Maybe lack of approval from parents, and then that's why they don't have any confidence of what they're doing always. Maybe verbal abuse by someone, others, right? It's like a different understanding. It's totally different from the psychoanalysis, right? How we develop the personality, they really emphasize the fixation. So each stage have a different contentment of their life, and then if they are fixed there, and then you're gonna solve the problem, go back to there, right? There is a kind of you can use the specific way that is not much psychotic disorders like this one. Depression is a little bit different from degree of the depression, and then maybe maybe if really severe mental health issues, then maybe a little bit different, right? But usually see the kind of issues, and then it's not the little bit maybe it depends on how you see, but still people are struggling with addictions and then other difficult problems and like self-esteem issues, right? Let's see the last one is the techniques, and then what kind of technique they use. And sometimes maybe depends on, but usually they use their techniques, and it's hard to kind of just explaining. I try to look it up and what is that one and what is that one, and then but still if we don't have any training and any experience, it's kind of that's just a knowledge, right? But still maybe you gotta use, and then maybe if you are more interested in, then you can look it up, right? Techniques in Gestalt therapy is one of the two forms, either exercise or the experiment. And there is a two, what is it? Exercise including activities such as frustration actions, and let them experience a really kind of failed and frustrating situation. Sometimes it's cruel. Maybe certain, they set up certain things and talk about and how they feel. Because the purpose is to use this way experiment to work and aware self. Let them aware self, how feel and how respond, right? That's one of the exercise, the frustration actions, and others sometimes confusion. And if you have a confusion, don't know what to do, kind of hesitant, why? And kind of it's, even though it's negative and but still, if you want to know the reality, and sometimes you gotta know, and then you gotta know self and how react and how respond and how they feel, right? What a fantasy role, fantasy. Fantasy is a kind of daydreaming of a future in the past, whatever, even the impossible, what you're dreaming about, right? Daydreams. That's really helpful. And it kind of erase their self-esteem. And then it's helpful just think about and fantasy there, and then come back to the here and now, and then kind of help them understand what is the here and now, and then work on the level of their development, kind of improve in the self-esteem like that. Use the fantasy. Sometimes they use the role play. Maybe they have a really hard relationship with the parent, maybe father or mother, and then kind of with the therapist, and they kind of change the roles, and then okay, I'm a child, and then I'm gonna be a parent, and then they're gonna be the therapist gonna be child, you, right? The client. They change the role and then they experience how they feel and what they learn and talk about it and understand more and aware more. That's the role play. Yeah, fantasy role play and other role plays is common in these therapies. It's a psychodrama, it's kind of the same. They have a meaning of kind of things and then play the dramas and watch it and then right. That is a kind of activity that kind of therapy that can help the client. What about the experiment? Experiment on unplanned creative innovations that grow out of the here and now, action between client and counselor. It's not unplanned, but experiment to grow out of the here and now. That's a kind of it's not like that's why it's not even though it's not planned, but still we can see how important the relationship between and the counselor and the client, right? Yeah, maybe while you guys in session and counseling and counsel really good ideas and more helpful and then they can use it like that. What about like psychoanalysis and dream work in Gestalt therapies, right? Dream work. And kind of telling the about the dream and focus on the awareness of dream from the perspective of each character's element and dream analysis, interpretations. Because sometimes, I don't know, if you are really stressful situation and then recollect in your dreams. Can you experience that? Sometimes you have a really preoccupied with something and then in that night and then it came out in the dream. I know the whole situation is different. But this one is kind of interpreted the situation and individual, all kind of stuff. I don't know how it works, but sometimes a lot makes sense, but it makes sense a lot, and sometimes it doesn't make sense. Yeah, that's why maybe they said you need training. And teacher, it's a really common technique in Gestalt therapy. And teacher is a process where the client addresses a part of the personalities as if it was an entity sitting on empty chair, and then client maybe switch the perspective by switching chairs, maybe simply address the chair. And it's a lot of different ways, but the technique is the contraindicated for severely disturbed client. And sometimes they use the empty chairs of role play, and sometimes, I read about a little bit more, and then here's the empty chairs here, and then therapist, and then start what is it there, and empty chair, and starting and they observe why is empty chair is there, what if, and kind of see the environment and different perspective, and then try to aware, and then help the client to aware of self, right? That is an empty technique. So it doesn't mean that you don't empty sitting, just kind of assume that and then talk and observe and kind of understand the feeling and perspectives, right? That's a common techniques. What about confrontation is another gestalt in therapies, and then sometimes it's just hard to confront the situation that it's really, really hard situation that in past or not, and then kind of try to avoid the situation, escape the situation. I know that someone who people who kind of struggle with the drug and substance abuse, and then usually they are okay and they stop and then they behave very well and they don't do. But my observation I had, and then they were really hard situation they cannot handle. It's not maybe handle, but it's really hard, and then they try to escape from the situation and went back to drug. That's why confrontation is kind of just think about who you are. Self-image is different from your ideal images. It's a discongruent, right? Incongruent. And try to let them come confront the situation. Just think about it. It's not for every client. Depends on the client, right? So, and counselor calls attention to the incongruence between the client's vocalization and observed emotion or behaviors. Confront. That is another making the rounds is a group exercise in group therapy. So a client is kind of sitting there and then say something, right? Sentence each members of the group and then add something personal to each person, and then try to see try to see themselves and others. And what about the taking responsibility? It's not easy, but still homework is one way that they can do it, and then they use the kind of technique, and then responsibilities mean that they really know the reality, the present, right? And then there is maybe there's a confrontations and all the process and what you're gonna actually do, actions, right? And then maybe we got a client and kind of know the whole situation and integrate all the past and present and then feelings and thought and right, what have behavior and done and then doing, and try to know what is responsible, take a choice, make a choice, right? Oh, if you wanna go forward, if you wanna grow and deal with it that way. So maybe like a question, usually they use the kind of a statement, but like a question like this. May I read your sentence is a kind of a question that the counsel asks before giving the client a more specific expression of what counsel believers is what the underlying message of the client, right? And just think about and how can hold the process and then how can we help the problem. There's a lot of different way that, similar way that, but still this is the basic one that people usually using. Maybe sometimes empty is kind of a common word, and confrontation is a common word, and the experiment is a common word, and then other stuff is kind of role play is a common word, and then other they don't say that. Some people use the fantasy, and some people use the other word like this, and then but we needed to know the basic word of how they what kind of technique use to help the client to realize who they are in the present, right? In the present. And that's the Gestalt psychologist. And then I hope that just think about, and then last night my communication, let's go back to the beginning of the conversation, and then wow. Well, we use too much electricity. Why? We paid a lot. I never paid like this. It's unbelievable. And then, why so? And I said, my wife said, because of me. And then I'm always hard, and then I'm going through menopause, and then and my body is hot and cold and hard, but now it's getting hot and hot, and I need air conditioner. Sometimes my wife is coming wearing the short and pants and sleeve and short, right, shirt, and then but I'm wearing the long sleeves, long pants because it's cold. My little one is always coming home, come back home, and then it's air conditioner is kind of degrees are different. I and my younger one and I, we can tolerate around the 80s. My partner, my wife cannot tolerate 80s. She cannot sometimes tolerate it. Nowadays we don't set up like a 70s, and we don't set up the 75. And we set up like a 77 or average is kind of 78. That's our temperature, room temperature, and then but still it's hot. And then talking about it's 78. It's really comfortable for me, and then my wife said, "Oh, it's so hot. Oh, I like push down." And then if I feel cold, and I wear the jacket and other long sleeve like that. And then this is why it's so expensive, right? There's kind of present, I'm talking about the building, and what's the cost, environment. And sometimes, maybe we can keep turning the air conditioner instead of turning on the air conditioner. We use the fan, right? So a lot of different see the environment, what resources we have, and then for me, and then our budget is kind of set, right? They don't raise our salary every month. Depends on our situation, right? No, never. Just we have to manage it with how much we make. Maybe a year later, and nowadays inflation is so high. So one of the ways they work. Okay, even though inflation is there, just think about and use your money as usual, like before, and then you're gonna bankrupt, you're gonna broke soon, right? You're gonna be broke soon. And break young. How young? You're gonna be broken soon, and but still, think about and start what comes into your life. Anxieties, right? That's what and then and if I go to counselor, and then I was so anxious about and money. So, and I anxious about money now, and then counselor maybe look at back and write some most was unplanned kind of expenses. Why? And then try to see and the environment and try connect to the environment again and resources again and specifically, and there is a way that I can cut down other ways, right? That's a counseling process, and try to remove the anxieties. It's different from pursuing the meaning of life and fulfill the purpose of life, right? That's the existential therapy. But this one is there is still life issues and anxieties, right? Still going through. It's not even though they are not psychotic issues, but still problem. But still, we gotta deal with the daily life, right? That's why more is an existential therapies and this and also the Gestalt therapy is more not those mental issues, but more difficulty that people come from now, right? And there's a kind of issues, but really maybe you can see what is the difference, and we can see, and basic direction is really same, but techniques and emphasis is really different, right? And I hope that you can understand one of the humanistic psychotherapies, right? This is a Gestalt psychotherapy. So interesting though. In the beginning, I just think about how Gestalt psychology influence, kind of on the therapies. Finally, in the beginning, I questioned, right? I know the basic kind of principle that I learned when I studied psychology, and I read more and see the basic philosophy, and then also see how they understand the human being, and then kind of make sense and connections there, right? So understanding of a basic theory is really important. So I hope that you guys have if you have more understanding of the theory, and then maybe you can go back, and then depends on the authors, it depends on the organizations, and then expression is a little bit different, but you can see the common things, right? I hope that you guys have really helpful to understand the Gestalt psychology, and then there is a basic, so you gotta know the basic was a nature of a human being, how they understand the nature of human beings, right? What is counselor roles, what is the goals, and what is the techniques, kind of basic, this kind of orientation that we have for the class. All right, so you guys, and I hope that a little bit understanding more human being is with a different perspective, and maybe you can use maybe it's not a expert level, but still remember the basic understanding of a human being, and then maybe you can use it when you see the others. All right, so you guys have a great week and God bless you. I know it's really humid and hot, and then I hope that still you can know how to deal with this weather. God bless you. See you.